realize the self. That is a teaching from India, a spiritual teaching. Realize the self. What is the self? The self is the consciousness back of your mind. Your mind is pretty much you and your life living as a body on planet Earth. But behind your personal mind is transpersonal mind. Transpersonal mind means it's the same mind behind my mind and behind your mind. And you can sometimes see someone who's an expert in transpersonal psychology. Now, somebody might say, well, the transpersonal psychology means that you are face to face with a psychologist and you're talking about things you have in common. But I'm not going to go with that. That's just cheap and tawdry. It's a cheap out. Now, the better way of looking at it is, I don't know why yet. I'm going to see if I can come up with a good rationale for why, but I don't know yet. So the whole idea about transpersonal psychology, the way I'm describing it is, because I've seen this on the internet many years ago. I saw this diagram of consciousness, and I'm just trying to give it to you. I don't have the picture here as I'm walking along, so I'm having to give you a bit of a word picture. But the transpersonal psychology consciousness contains, some people might say, archetypes. What is an archetype? The way I define it for myself is, let's have an archetype of a I don't know, an archetype of a fireman. An archetype, no, well, maybe that's a specific thing, but firemen would belong to a larger group called heroes. Another large group might be the ingenue. That would be especially a young woman, like, let's go from like 20 to 22. That person, that actor plays the ingenue. So that could be an archetype. The devil, all the things in the tarot deck are all archetypes. Let's go with the Greek and the Roman gods. These kind of things. So those are all in the transpersonal consciousness. And then behind the transpersonal consciousness, we could have consciousness of like a plant kingdom. And then, I don't know beyond that, but all of this stuff we share in common. So if you're going to realize the self in, the description I was giving you at the beginning, what is the self in this particular description of consciousness? The self is behind all of that stuff that I just gave you just a moment ago. The self, is it differentiated or undifferentiated? In other words, is it specific or general? The self is yourself. And that's all they're going to give me. Sometimes the personal consciousness is compared to a small droplet of water in the sea spray above a wavy ocean. One droplet of ocean water would be your personal mind. And then the ocean would be the self. So if you're going to realize the self, realizing means, does it mean you have an understanding of it, an inner standing of it? Realize, is it like when you get to know that 2 + 2 = 4? Is that a realize? What do they mean by realizing the self? Well, it kind of means that you didn't know about the self before. You thought in your consciousness all there was is just you. And there's no other stuff other than just you. And as far as all these archetypes and things, that's not you. That's somebody's psychology textbook, and it's basic programming. It's a program to run on your consciousness. So that's the way you would look at it that way. If you thought that your mind was totally separate from everyone else's minds. And this kind of mind is known pretty much as a ego mind. An ego mind pretty much doesn't believe that it's connected through consciousness, through mind, to other people and other things. This person would be an atheist because they wouldn't believe there's a consciousness greater than its own. Would this consciousness of this ego person think that it was better than everyone else? Very rarely. Narcissistic messianic complex. But, you'd be somebody who was like one of the great conquerors of ancient history of Earth. So, like Alexander the Great, who conquered a whole pile of countries way back thousands of years ago. But Alexander, in that time period, and I'd have to go and look it up to see what they actually say, but, in the days of ancient Greece, well, the Greek people knew about the Greek gods and their qualities. So did Alexander think of himself as being a lesser mind than one of these Greek gods, or equal to one of these Greek gods? Anyways, realizing the self is perhaps giving the idea to you or to someone else who hears this phrase to put a big question mark on this item, which means I don't know. And I'm putting a question mark on there because it's a question for me. If I don't know, then this question means I got a question. What is this? So realizing the self, and traditionally what people in India who were teachers would say, to realize the self, you would meditate. Which means spending a lot of time alone inside your body with you, and probably with your eyes closed, so you're not, you're just sitting there in the lotus position. And then what? Well, you would maybe be given additional instruction on what to do when you're meditating. But I've never been to India, and so I can't really tell you what instruction one of these guru kind of people would give you for meditation. But probably if you looked on the internet in your search engine, you could get some instructions from India about how to meditate to realize the self. Make sure you put all that in there in search terms. I mean, some of these other meditations might not be about realizing the self. The meditations might be about, I don't know, like guided meditations where, you know, they tell you a story about you going here, there, and everywhere. Is that a realizing the self kind of meditation? I would say no. But I might be wrong, but in my first glance I would say no, because you're kind of like watching a movie. You know, the olden days in the 1920s, people used to listen to radio dramas. Hi-ho, silver away, the Lone Ranger kind of things. So that's kind of what a guided meditation is basically you listening to an old-fashioned radio drama. That's not the same way as realizing consciousness and looking within you for signs of these things in consciousness, like the self. Will the self talk to you in meditation? The answer is we cannot say, because we don't know. But will the self give you signs, like external signs that you can see with your eyes or hear with your ears? Possibly. Because we would be switching to a different kind of spiritual teaching. Don Juan Matos and Don Juan Matos's group of sorcerers, they definitely had a word, and they called it, the spirit. The spirit was the one that gave them omens. And an omen would be like an external thing to Don Juan Matos and his student Carlos Castaneda. Maybe it would be an instant thunderstorm. Or maybe there was a group of people and a group of children, say 12 years old, say you had 10. And lo and behold, while they're all standing around together, a butterfly flew over top of them and landed on one particular child. That particular child would be the spirit saying, this is your omen, this is the child that you pay attention to now. That would be your omen. So, if you're thinking that the self is like the spirit, the answer is I don't really know. Because I haven't been to India and I haven't had an Indian guru who teaches this self-realization. So, I don't even have a guess. But, they just seem like large consciousnesses, the self behind all of us, that, is basically there everywhere, connecting all of us. And that to me sounds like what I call the spirit, which is the great intelligence. Another word for this spirit, in my eyes, is the is. And that comes from books. What book was it? The author of the book Illusions called the spirit the is. So realizing this, things that are omen-like, what I described, Synchronicities or meaningful coincidences, if you have some of these, then they really shake your reality. You know, you've just been going along, minding your own business. We always did. And then all of a sudden, something happens that's a major coincidence that makes you go, yeah, we did take statistics at university, but I've pretty much forgotten all about it. But I do recall, you know, like, well, some people say that these coincidences aren't all that rare. And then, depends on the coincidence, I suppose. General coincidences, not rare at all, these people would say. But, you know, my high school mathematics teacher said, don't buy lottery tickets. He said, the odds of you winning the lottery are so astronomical, he called it a voluntary tax, because in Canada our lotteries are run by the government. He said it's a voluntary tax. In other words, if you spend $20 on lottery tickets, you just gave $20 to the government. Because you have such an astronomically small chance of winning. And, you know, you buying a ticket and having the coincidence of actually winning it, you might not think of that as a coincidence. But they are just simply screenshots of your life. And if you have, you know, two screenshots of something that are just make you go, oh, that's unbelievable, two things at the same time, it's just, well, it's some possible confirmation that there is something creating these coincidences on your life, especially if you get a bunch in a row. But a good statistician would say, you know, we studied all this when it came to the craps table at Las Vegas, and we designed Las Vegas so the gambling houses don't go broke. So it's all been studied, and in the end, you are going to have to try it out on your own, because as much as I can talk to you about this stuff, I'm not conscious of a coincidence until it happens. Am I creating them? I might say I'm open to them, and, you know, like, sometimes we do try in a very small way. But generally speaking, you know, when they happen, they're a great surprise to me.